bringing you another version of Convert This, but this is a special one. I have here Vince Venturella, who you may know from the Warhammer YouTubers page, from being the #1 fan of the Narrations and Lamentations by Materim and the Boys, by being a premier member of the PMP, Painters Motivating Painters. Let's see, are there any other anything I'm leaving out there, Vince?
I'm a Renaissance man, yes, man of many titles. That's me.
So, and again, if anybody doesn't know, Vince won by a huge margin the Converting Award of the YouTubers 2014 End of Year Awards, and well deserved. So we had discussed, since I'm a big converter myself, let's do a hangout and talk about converting. So thank you very much for joining me today, and I encourage everybody, by the way, to go to Vince's page on YouTube and subscribe to him. He's got some great content. And so, Vince, when did you first of all get into this aspect of the hobby? It's a really different part of Warhammer and miniature wargaming in general. So, what really gave you that inspiration?
Yeah, so honestly, about a year ago for this part of it. I started playing Warhammer back in '98 or something, somewhere around about that time, and I had like a really crappy, awful Empire army that was probably made out of like Hero Quest figs and things I had found stuff in the trash, or like rocks out of the garden, I don't know, whatever random thing that I could, lay my hands on with my enormous college student wealth. And then, I lucked my way into an eBay deal of a Skaven army, some of which I still have, wherein I painted incredible models, like that guy right there. Look at the incredible quality. Whoa! Whoa, there's colors on him, and for a long time that was kind of all I cared about. And then, like in the last year, in 2014, I started getting more into the community as opposed to just occasionally playing Warhammer games. I was never a big tournament person anyways. And as I got into the community, what actually started this all off, I'll say, is something you yourself are doing right now, and that's more time. Because I had kind of been only playing a game of Warhammer like every month or couple months, it was just like it was there, we were doing it. And then somebody said, hey, remember Mordheim? Didn't we have a lot of fun with that? And I was like, that was a lot of fun. And then out came the stories of warbands of old and great treasures to be won and murderizations of enemy warbands had. And I started, and collecting warbands is so much easier. You've seen that, like you're 8-10 figs in, you're good to go. And the smallness of it sort of gave me a love and appreciation for painting, for hobbying, for crafting. And then from there, I started doing it more and more, and I was like, oh my God, I never realized it, but I love this. This is amazing. This is a level of the hobby I never realized I could enjoy, and now I want to do Warhammer all the time because there's so much more than just pushing around pigs on the table.
So what was the first figure that you actually took not out of the box, or that you mashed up together? Do you actually have it? Is that the figure that you just showed us?
Oh no, that random little rat ogre. Well, it's always been in my brain. Even going back way then, I guess there's little things. Like here's the first semi thing that I did, where this is back in like '98, where it looks like it was done by a 4-year-old. But it's a little rat ogre, and you can see he's got a nice dead Empire man at his feet, and he's holding half a torso that I cut in half. And like my goblin warband from that time period, I converted all my little goblins over. But the first real conversion I did, you might be able to see him back there. You see the guy with the wings?
Oh, yeah.
Kind of there. The Hyro Titan, right? So there's no Hyro Titan. And it doesn't exist. But I had a Tomb King's army, and I was like, well, I want to run this thing, so I've got to make the thing. And I made the thing, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. I'm going to keep chopping up every single miniature I have that's over 1 inch tall from now on.
Excellent. Well, for me, I had been out of the hobby for well over a decade, and when I got back in and I was starting to watch a lot of the content and follow a number of the people that I still follow, what I had decided is I wanted to create something different. I sucked so bad as a painter when I first was playing this. And I still remember how thick the layers of paint were on. I had played 40K before I actually found Fantasy, and you could barely see the detail between the joints in the armor, how thick the Dark Angels that I had painted up were in that green. And I didn't know anything about shades or black or washes or whatever. And I was determined that if I was going to get back into this hobby and spend the kind of money that I realized I was going to be spending, I wanted to make it unique and my own. And I decided that I wanted to make this, and I still can't pronounce it correctly. I know even you have, I think, have corrected me several times. Mussolini, is that the proper way to say it?
Oh, wow, yeah, who knows? But it's a beautiful army you put together. I think there are maybe 4 people in the world who know how to pronounce that, so I wouldn't worry about it.
Maybe the guy who wrote it is one of them.
Yeah.
So for those who are new to the channel, it's a Bretonnian-themed undead or vampire count's army. And I just wanted it because I love the Bretonnians and I love the undead. But it's a huge undertaking. I remember a guy at a local store told me it's very expensive. It's like you're buying 2 armies and then a third with all the cost and time and whatnot. And it is a huge undertaking. And I'm going to probably be working on it, as I often say, when my son is probably graduating from college, and he's 8, by the way. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but as soon as I got into it, I got to tell you, it's almost as much fun as actually playing the game. Is converting up. I'm so crazy into converting. I still have tons of stuff that I haven't painted. I just convert it and then I move on to the next converting project. Do you find that happens with you as well?
I'm very, it can happen very easily, but I have a very strict policy about it. I'm literally this is the thing, I convert it, I take it through, I finish it, it's done. I'm like a factory line worker, right? Only I'm doing the whole thing, I guess. I certainly understand, because it is so much fun to convert them along. I have the Storm Fiends sitting in a box, and I know I'm going to chop the heck out of them and, try to do all sorts of crazy things with them. And, every day I walk into my office and I'm like, maybe I should just put those together. Just put them together. What's wrong? Just do it. Just put it together. And I'm like, no, I must not do it, because I know if I start, I won't finish what I'm currently working on. And then, yeah, I don't think that's unusual at all, especially because it's there is just a difference. Sometimes when you're painting it, it can feel like you're already rounding third. You know what I mean? It's just yeah, okay, let's just get this done now. Especially if the real challenge in the model was the conversion and not the paint job. If it's going to be a fairly standard execution paint job, but the conversion is really amazing, then you're you just lose the motivation to go to get it all the way across the line, right?
Now, I've spoken to a number of people who look like they're really good painters, and this is a whole aspect of the hobby that not everybody's into. Some people just want to line up gray models and great plastic models and play, and they're really into the rules and the competitiveness of the game. And then there are people who are much more complete hobbyists, and they get into the painting, and that's something that I've really learned since I got back into the hobby. And it's an evolution that doesn't ever end. There's always somebody who's got some new trick or trade that can teach you how to be a better painter. So I'm just really beginning to grasp how much there is to learn about that, and learn from people, especially in the PMP, which I think is a phenomenal teaching tool and a great motivational tool. That's what this was built for. But I find that there's a lot of people who have that creative side with painting, but they're not really that interested in the converting. They'd rather just take a model out of the box, put it together as cleanly and as nicely as possible, and then maybe they'll paint it up, and they could be magnificent in that, but they just don't have the drive when it comes to converting. What surprises me with that is that part of building a model is converting, whether you know it or not. If you're into this hobby and you're putting down tufts of grass, or you're putting gravel on a base, that's actually in some respects converting. You're putting your own little personal stamp, however complex or simple you're making that. It is a level of converting. What do you say to people to try and see if they might have that creative spark, but in other aspects of the hobby, but they don't really delve into this aspect of it?
Well, I think that the main thing that gets in people's way, right, and maybe you've run into this too, Mitch, is that I think, and the reason I think this is a thing is when you converted Nagash, which was amazing, your conversion of Nagash was absolutely fantastic. Let me just say that. And when you say, by the way, that I won Best Conversion by a lot, that is a total lie. Just to clear that up real quick, I won by the slimmest of margins in the world over you, because you got the second most votes, and it was certainly on the back of a lot of them, but a lot of people specifically said MC1 Gamer Nagash. Let me point that out. All right. So anyway, just to get that clear, I think what I know what I saw a lot of people say to you was, how can you chop up $100 model, right? And I think that there's this like fear that if you take a razor blade to something, you could ruin it. Let me let you know a secret. If you cut it, you can glue it back together. The same process that splits it apart can undo it. It's called glue. The model already came in pieces. It was broken when you bought it. You're the one who fixed it. You can refix your own cuts too, not just the ones the factory made. And yeah, I think that's part of the problem. People are afraid to break their toys. And part of what you got to do to convert and get those unusual things is just be like, you know what? Let's not be afraid to break it. But I think the best advice is start small. Just do some weapon swaps, right? Cut off a sword, put on your sword. Use a different arm. Try some different heads. Just little things here and there. It's like any hard drug. You want to start small, and then work your way up.
Yeah, I did hear that. I heard that a lot. I still hear it. And I heard it from people locally that I was talking to. Anthony actually is the first person who actually said it, because I actually threw the idea out at him before I actually purchased the model. And he looked at me and he said, "You're going to take a $100 model and you're going to rip it up? You're crazy." And then it got echoed throughout everybody who I had talked to. And confidence is an issue. I was converting up all kinds of other models, but none of these kits were that expensive, or where I just sat there with the clippers and all the tools on more than one occasion and put it aside and then decide, I'll get back to this. I'll work on this other project. It was very nerve-wracking to actually cut through an expensive kit like that, but it really comes from confidence. If you do it small and you just replace an arm, replace a head, just play with something small and build yourself up to it. Eventually, you'll gain the confidence. I really feel that is the case. And thank you for the comments. I have some pictures for the stuff that you did. We'll go with some of the eye candy later. So stick with us if you're watching this. We'll show some of the pictures from Vince's nice stuff, and I'll show a couple of things of myself. But I first want to get into, look, if you're really looking to get into converting, some of the same tools that you use for your regular hobby work are going to be the same tools that you're going to use for converting. But there are some things that you probably should be using or should be looking to purchase or get used to using. You don't need laser cutters or anything like that, but some basic molding tools for that you use already, probably with green stuff. The clippers and other stuff are going to be some of the standard things that you could still use with converting. But what are some of the things that you use when you do your converting, or when you're preparing models or doing whatever you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing to say is your basic tools. If you're putting together models, you already have, right? There you go. Your clipper and your X-Acto knife. Ooh, mystical things. Yes, this is your best. These are your best friends. But because most of your work's going to be there. But everything you can get, like you said, green stuff and stuff. Get yourself something like that. It's like a nice little set of files that I bought for, I don't know, let's say $3 or $4 on Amazon or something, right? Easy. Get yourself, like some little. So one of the big tricks to converting is pinning, right? So hopefully, if you have a drill in your house, that's good. I prefer a power drill rather than a hand drill. But even if you don't want to mess with that, get yourself a little simple hand drill so you can pin the things you do. There's a nice simple hand drill. That's maybe $6 on Amazon. I mean, again, the reality is the tools you need for converting are far cheaper than your painting supplies, right? Like when you total up brushes and the actual paints, my God, there's not even a comparison. For $30, you're going to have everything you need, assuming you already own a drill. Whereas $30, congratulations on your set of like super basic white, red, and yellow and blue paint, and your crappy hobby store brushes. I hope that gets you through. So yeah, like good files. If you're gonna use green stuff, all it takes is a couple simple tools. Let me show you the most useful tool in the world for green stuff, beyond water. Look at this mystery item right here. This is a little wooden punji stick that my wife had for making, I don't know, I think like shish kebabs or something. I don't even know what it is, but I found them and stole them, and this has a sharp end and a not sharp end, and if you roll it, it's like a rolling pin. And if you get it wet, green stuff doesn't stick to it. And this right here will cover most of the green stuff needs you had. Yeah, you can go get the like rubber tipped kit and the shaping tools and all that, but somehow I don't think you're starting by crafting your own models from green stuff, which is really what those tools are. Yeah. You want pins? Great. Here's my pins. You know what I use to pin? That's probably too small to see. You see what that is?
Yep.
The mystical paper clip. You probably have 2,000 of them in your house. If you have a huge model you need to pin that this isn't going to hold, if you have wire hangers, not to make a reference to an 80s movie, no more wire hangers, but if you have some wire hangers, go take those, cut them up. They are effectively 1/8-inch brass rods. They will hold anything together. You can build a bridge on them.
Anybody who gets that movie reference, by the way, you get a cookie.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of the basics that I use. What about yourself? Anything else? You got any sneaky tools?
You know, the basic tools are the ones I use the most, but I will say that for some of the more advanced work, and I do use a power drill and I use a hand drill depending on what the conversion is. Excuse me. There are some situations where a power drill may be way overkill, and you know, you may be just really. And I have a whole array of tiny drill bits that I use, but the hand drill can really be effective. But I think the thing that I'm the happiest that I invested in, and this is the next level up, is a Dremel. I have, and I didn't bring my tools to show, but anybody who doesn't know what a Dremel is, you can get it at any hardware store. You probably pay anywhere from $30 to maybe as much as $100, depending on getting a good one. You don't need a really great one. All you need is it's a motor that has a clamp, and you can put a little grinding tip on it, or it could have a flat circular disc for cutting. And I found that has helped tremendously, because I can get a very small little bit that will it's an easier way to file, but it can really dig out little pieces that I want to grind out if I want to put like another head in somewhere. Or I want to I need a bigger hole and I don't want to use the drill. The drill is it's like taking a hatchet to the model, sometimes a drill, and it's not as precise. This can be very precise, but the actual circular top can slice through sections, and that has helped me tremendously, because if you clip, you can warp the plastic, and this will just liquefy the plastic because it goes so fast, and it's like a saw. And you got to be careful with this. Anybody who's used a Dremel will know that you're going to have scars on your fingers if you screw up, and you don't want to lose a finger either. So you got to be very careful. Protect yourself and be careful. But it is a phenomenal tool once you get used to it for some of the next level of converting. And I think that's helped me substantially in terms of how to raise the game, because you can drill holes and then pin arms. That's great, but when it comes to things, if you want to start magnetizing, or you really want to start swapping stuff where there's seamless transitions and it doesn't show as well, you want to get some precise tools, and that's a great one.
Yeah, it's a lot faster than a normal saw, right? It's 5,000 RPMs, so I mean it will slightly, you gotta be using it is. I find the sander part of it very useful, because that just for like if you're trying to get rid of metal flash and stuff like that, there is no easier, more efficient way you can really smooth metal, like on metal minis and stuff like that. So yeah, one other one just occurred to me. Here's a nice thing I highly recommend. Beyond green stuff. Green stuff's great, but this right here, Vallejo plastic putty. Like when you are gluing two pieces together that don't necessarily fit an arm that isn't for that model, you're gonna have cracks. And yeah, you can get out the green stuff and mix it up and then work it and sand it and no. Or you can just use this, which is an acrylic-based paint putty. It's white paint and this whatever it is, I don't know, whatever's in here. Magic, I guess, is what's in this bottle. And you can just like squeeze a little bit in there, smooth it out. It will react with water just like paint. You can wet it, wipe the edge, done. You will not see it. It will fill the crack. It's not good for giant holes. You got to get out green stuff for that. But for a nice little seam or a crack, it's quick, it's fast, it's 2 minutes, dries in about 15 minutes. Good to go.
You see, the little things like that, and I think that it would be great to have an ongoing dialogue about this type of stuff, because there's lots of tricks and lots of shortcuts and lots of just basics that I think once some of the people who are really into that part of the hobby, the more creative part of the hobby, beyond just moving around our little plastic toys, I think they, even if you started small, I think it could build up and you'd see a lot more creativity. I'm always astonished and amazed and very impressed when I see at these big events, these GTs, people do these montages of the pictures that they see of their armies. And this is a huge inspiration for me. And I save a lot of those videos and refer back to them, stills and videos. And I find that there are plenty of people out there who convert. Some people converting entire armies from the ground up. They're not as insane as I am, but there are plenty that are as and more that are converting these huge armies, and they're practically from scratch, or I can't even tell where the components are. I'm not that savvy knowing every model that's out there on the line, certainly, but sometimes you can tell, and it's really interesting and creative, but you got to start somewhere. So if you were to tell somebody, hey, first step before you start building to that level, and use that stuff as, of course, as inspiration. I would very much welcome people to take a look at some of the big YouTubers who are competitive and go to a lot of the tournaments and events. But if you were to tell somebody, hey, start with this, try this, it's a very basic level. The first 1, 2, or 3 types of converting, adjusting, or customizing models, what would you say would be would you suggest?
Well, the first thing, I think your first thing you said is really accurate, which is YouTube. Great resource, right? I mean, I learned how to paint, more or less like how to really paint, by watching YouTube, and by use those resources. Go to like Dr. Faust's painting clinic. He has a whole playlist about model conversion, right, and the work he's done. And so the first things I would say, like when you're starting out, pick some large models you like say you're a Skaven player. How about those? How about the like Island of Blood Rat Ogres? They're like $2. They're big. Like something like that is where you want to start. And the swaps you want to do are, where you start by pick a new arm, reposition an arm, do a weapon swap. And then the next thing I'd tell you to do is reposition a limb. And by that I mean, like, take a limb that's solid, that's pointing down, right, and make it go like this. Because once you figure that out, how to like slice it and then how to remove it, and again, Dr. Faust has a video on this. It's a simple secondary cut. You got to make a new angle on it, reattach it back in, putty it over, and all of a sudden, just that little change, when you go from a guy standing there doing just flat on the ground to being in some kind of dynamic pose, right, where you can move the way the legs are, so that way you can get them onto something like that, right? That right there is going to be a big advantage for you. The other thing I would say is then play with some green stuff. Try to make a cloak or something like that. Like those are the 3 basic tools you'll need. How to swap one component for another, how to reposition a limb or a piece, and then how to green stuff some very basic stuff like cloaks or a hood or a tabard, whatever. Like something that really is very basic. It's a flat piece of cloth. That's all you need to do.
And use a rank and file model. Use a standard throwaway model to start with before you go to that showpiece, centerpiece, or character that you really, that clamshell character that you bought for $15 or $20. Get the guy who's in a box set that if you mess it up, you can chuck it in the garbage and go pick another one and screw that up too if you need to.
Yeah, your first conversion shouldn't be Glocken, right? Like, yeah, start smaller.
I don't know, that one, I think you can make a lot of mistakes with Glocken. You just, that's another pus bubble.
That is a good point. It's easy to, like, Nurgle and demons in general, right, are hard to mess up, because it's just like, well, that's how it looks like. It came out of the warp, whatever. Stick another tentacle on there and call it a day.
There's a lot of room for error with those models, yes.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go to actually some of these pictures. Maybe you can tell us where your inspiration was, where what you did with that. Because I asked you for a few pictures, and I'll show you a couple of the ones that are in my library as well. So I'd like to go do that. Maybe we can go ahead and we can. Let's see if I can go screen share. We can just talk about maybe some of the techniques you used, or just what was the inspiration behind actually making it that way, because you have some really great stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and screen share, and let's see. We're going to go with the. All right. So tell me if you're seeing my desktop there.
Hopefully, right now it's doing me. I can see it. Oh, hey, hold on. There we go. We're there.
All right, now for anybody who's under, I guess, 15, cover your eyes. I didn't have the opportunity to figure out how to do the fuzzies, but so tell us about this model, what it actually is supposed to be, and then where you got the materials from.
Yeah, so I wanted to do an all-female Khorne army, like demons of Khorne, but not Maze, like the demon lord of fury and death. And I wanted a really interesting bloodthirster. And I'll tell you right now, the first place I always start is just like Google searching the crap out of images. I cannot recommend that enough. Just image search alternative bloodthirster models and stuff like that. And I'm just scanning through, and somebody had used an Ultraforged Tree Woman as a keeper of secrets. Okay? And I thought, aha, that's neat. Like, that's kind of cool. And then I looked at it, and I was like, that does look like muscle showing under skin. And so this is the Ultraforged Tree Woman. She normally comes with a bunch of extra, she has branches and stuff all over. So I cut all those off and puttied over sanded them down and then puttied in the joints. I did leave a few on there, and you're probably not gonna be able to see it here, but kind of under her arm on that picture, we see that little sliver of white on her right arm. Like if you looked at her from behind, that's bone. And that's I kept some of the roots or the branches looking like bone poking out.
It's disturbing, I got to tell you, but it's disturbing in a way that obviously really highlights exactly what you were trying to go for.
And then the wings are, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I love her to death. Wings are extra Chimera wings. I had a Chimera that I had picked up on the cheap. Some store clearanced it for like $20, so I was immediately on that. Never pass up a giant model when you can get it cheap. And I used the Chimera itself for a conversion for my Chimerian War Sphinx, like a War Sphinx that's a Chimera. And then I had the wings left over, so she inherited those wings. And then her shoulder pieces, I'm sure you recognize, being an Undead Legions player, as those are actually the two sides of the head of, I believe, Neferata's Mortarch, or it might be Manfred's Mortarch. I can't see it from here. No, it's Neferata's. Yeah.
Because you'll have a lot of use, you'll have a lot of need for Neferata's bits, certainly.
Yeah.
So
I'm an Archon man.
So did you get this? Did you get this this idea from actually seeing this model initially, or were you looking for solutions to make a bloodthirster?
I was looking for a solution to make a bloodthirster. I had been wanting this tree woman. I was aware of her from a while back, and that's another thing I'll say is, just go look at other miniatures companies. Be aware of what's out there. There's a lot of great resources in the YouTubers and on forums and stuff, and go look at Mears Miniatures and Mantic and Ultraforge and Darkforge and there's 100. Just go surf Cool Mini or not, right? And just find stuff you think looks cool. That's all you got to do, and then just keep it in your head. And you never know when something's going to be valuable. When you're going to have a thing later and be like, that would be awesome. I should use that for that. You never know. Don't try to fit it all in at once. Just just accumulate puzzle pieces, and they'll fall into place on their own later.
Great. All right, so I'm going to go and move to one that is kind of the signature of my army, and then we'll get back to another one of yours. When I first decided that I wanted to create a Bretonnian-themed undead army, I had actually seen somebody who'd done this before, and so I just wanted to put my own signature on it. But I had dremeled out all of these hollows inside of the Bretonnian warhorse, and then fitted. And that took a lot of work, and then fitted a lot of the skeletal horse in there, and then changed up some of the heads for skeletons. It's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding, and I'll go move to the transition. But you can see that if you come up with an idea and a design, you might be actually able to, and you can see a little bit of the really crude green stuff work here. But taking some of these different bits that you might see in different lines can really make these models unique, because this is my attempt to make not only Black Knights but also Hex Wraiths. So this is one of the finished products. And I'd say these are still a working product, I'm actually process. But the thing I love the most about it, which kind of gets a chuckle whenever I put them on the table, is the center one, which is, I usually use that as the champion. If you look at the tombstone, not the tombstone, the grave, the top of the coffin that they're kind of on top of, there's a little skeleton kind of peeking out from underneath there. And that always, people, when they look at the army, they always get a little, it's those little things I love seeing in other people's armies, so I wanted to include them in my own. Those little kind of signature things, something that'll make somebody laugh, or if they look close enough, they see that kind of, it's that aha moment, oh, you did that. I love seeing that in other people's conversions, and that's the kind of thing I aspire to put into each unit or into each model.
Yeah, absolutely. And those guys look great, and they're so fantastic. You know, you look at them and you're like, yeah, that's Hex Wraiths. Of course. I mean, what else would they be? And it's funny you mentioned the skeleton dude, because the second you flipped to this picture, I was like, skeleton guy under the sarcophagus stone. Like it's you immediately notice it, and it's a great thing. And exactly what you said. It's a little unique touch. And I think that's a lot about converting. Oftentimes it's just about going that little extra step, right? Don't rush it. Like, you're not in a race with anybody when you're converting these. Do the model, and then once you get the thing itself converted, step back and look at it and go, is there anything else I can do here? And think if there's maybe another little small touch or something, you know? You can keep building on things.
All right, so I'm going to move to another one of yours, and tell us a little bit about this one, because I just want you to know I love this model.
I love this guy, too. This was inspired by the last page of Nagash. Okay, so I think it's okay to give spoilers from the last page of Nagash, being that it came out 5 months ago. Right. But if you don't want to hear this, cover your ears for the next 10 seconds. But on the last page of Nagash, King Setra, the Imperishable, the Lord of Lords, King of Kings, who has been killed by Nagash, hears 4 voices talking to him and promising him power to strike back at his enemies, and he accepts and stands up and is given a new life. And so clearly he is reinvigorated by the Chaos Gods. And I love War Sphinxes, and I had some extra War Sphinx pieces, and you can of course put a Tomb King on a War Sphinx, and I thought, well, if Nagash is back, or sorry, if Setra is back, then he needs a mighty mount to stride into combat on. And as I mentioned, I had this Chimera, and I had sort of been looking for a use for him, and suddenly everything became clear. Chaos Chimera, War Sphinx, put the two together, peanut butter chocolate. So like you can see the 2 heads down at the bottom are the Chimera heads. The top one is the standard War Sphinx head. The rear left leg that you can just kind of see is actually a War Sphinx leg. The front paw cover there is actually from like the Gorgon, I believe, which is an excellent kit for conversion stuff. Like, I love the Gorgon. I converted mine to have all 6 of his arms on. And then his like little palanquin, or his howdah, whatever you want to say, those are the extra pieces from the Coven Throne, because I built it as a Coven Throne, so hence I had the extra cage pieces there. And then the top is just your standard Tomb King guy with a face swap from the Necropolis Knight Riders.
I got to tell you what I love most about this is, and there's 2 things actually. The first thing is that you use pieces from so many different kits to make something very specific. And some people might say, hey, that is tremendously expensive. I'm not buying all those kits just for those bits. There are bits places you can buy these little pieces from if you don't have extras from the bits from the box sets that you already get, that you can just cherry pick the pieces you need. You can get them on eBay. You can go to other places. There's lots of places I use that I think are great resources and are very efficient and cheap ways to buy bits. And sometimes they run out of stuff, and sometimes they don't. But the other way is if you buy these kits, especially if you have more than one army, you will have extras, and this is such a great way to get extra mileage out of all those bits. Don't get rid of your bits. Put them in a bin. I put them in little plastic bags. I wonder sometimes if my wife thinks I'm dealing pot on the side sometimes, because I have so many of these little plastic zips for all these little bits, and it's great for organizing them. And then I put them in plastic tubs. And if ever I need one, I mean, I'm sifting through these boxes probably as much as I'm actually doing the conversions. I love looking at this model because just as much as any of the other ones that we're going to showcase that you did, I could see all these different pieces, and for the most part, I could just tell, yeah, that came from that kit, that from that kit. The second thing I love about this is that it's very specific, fluff-wise, of where this belongs, of what this is. So anybody who's read the End Times book, the first book one, the book one for Nagash, which is by far my favorite of the ones to date, they're going to know, because this is, like you said, at the very end, it is absolutely ideal for that fluff. It's such a great model fitting that particular element of the story.
Yeah, I do love this model, and it was a lot of fun to make, and it's exactly what you said. I didn't buy any of these bits. Like, I didn't go out and buy these kits and spend, $400 to make this model. I had, the only thing I had bought was, like I said, I had that Chimera, and he was standalone. But most of it was just extra stuff I had, and that's exactly right. Keep your bits, keep them organized. Don't just leave them on the sprue, or if you do, then make sure your sprues are stored in an organized fashion. Go to like some craft store or Walmart or something and just buy a plastic bin organizer tray for $5 and separate them out. Just when you're done putting your model together, painting or whatever, just clip. That's all it takes. It's another 2 minutes, and it will reap countless benefits. And I absolutely agree on the bit sites too, like Horda Bits, Bullet Bits, Black Dagger Games. I mean, there's just a ton of them.
Bits Barn,
Yep.
let's see, Hobby Titan. They don't always have stock of everything, or they run out of some things at times. But some of the bigger ones, like Horda Bits, I've had mixed success with them. They sometimes, they don't have the greatest customer service, but I will say, out of all the ones I use, they probably have the biggest inventory and the most depth and wide, diverse amount of inventory. So try a lot of different ones and see where you have the best. You may have different pricing also with some places. You might be able to get different better prices for some of the smaller ones. But they're out there, and there's a lot of people that do it on the side.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to move on to, let's see, this next one. So this one kind of makes me laugh because I think the first model that I ever converted was back in when Undead were Undead. Before I had left the hobby and took my decade-plus hiatus, I actually converted up a Nagash model. And this is not the same one, just so you know. When I sold off all those armies back then, before I got married, which, by the way, partially paid for the ring, down payment on a car, all those things. When I was getting serious at life, I sold all those armies, and I can't even imagine what they must be worth today if I kept them all. Not the bad paint jobs notwithstanding. But this clowny Nagash model, and I thought it was the funniest thing at the time, but it's so ugly. And the pose they had was so awful, and I had seen some guy on some site somewhere. It may have even been in a White Dwarf, because this was before, this was pre-internet. So it can't have been, it had to be been in a White Dwarf somewhere. Some magazine picture of somebody doing a conversion of Nagash. And he just had a different pose with his sword held aloft and the staff behind him. And it looked impressive, because when you look at the actual Nagash model, even the picture on the cover, it just looks so stupid and goofy. And I was able to make it a little bit more impressive. I even took some green stuff at the time and made some hair that came around the back of his, raised, that not the cowl, but that whole high brim that he has behind his head. So when I was looking to get another model out of this, and I had an idea what I wanted to do with it, I just wanted to make it a unit filler. I found somebody who gave me in a trade who had one of these, and I just snatched it up real quickly. And I got it for a song, and I put him in a very similar pose, and I put him on one of the columns from the Arcane Ruins. And I got to tell you, right after I did that, I'm playing a game with Anthony. He's a really good source of information, Anthony, and good for creativity. I'm surprised he doesn't do more of this. I'm glad he's recently got into converting on his own fairly recently. But I put him in as a unit filler, and Anthony was like, you should make that guy your Hyro Titan. And I thought that was just such a great idea, because standing next to the big Nagash, it looks almost like Papa and Junior. So it worked out really well. So I'm very proud of this one, as well as and I stole the idea for these ghouls at the bottom from obviously somebody who had converted these guys up from the, what were they, the flagellant bodies with the ghoul bits. So I just wanted to bring this one because I thought this one was just humorous to see, the old clowny Nagash.
Well, two things on this. One, I love this as the Hyro Titan / unit filler. Yes, the old clown prince of the undead. Was there ever a more horrible, comical fig ever made? I'd be hard pressed to guess what it is. There you go, Reef. That is the answer to your question in that video. In one of his videos, he said, "What is the ugliest model?" He was talking about, will they ever make another thing like the Pumbagore? The Razor Gore, the Pumbaa thing.
Yep.
Nagash is uglier than Pumbaa. That's all I'm saying.
I agree.
But,
I agree.
But this is a great conversion. I love it. It's a great use of that model, and it looks totally appropriate. And what's even more wonderful is painted in stone like that, he doesn't look goofy like he did when you try to actually make him look like he's got a normal face and all that. There, he looks very imposing, like a sort of like a Witch King sort of statue face or something, right?
I kind of have this little story in the back of my head where in Nagash's first reign, he petitioned somebody to create a statue of him, and this is what he was presented with. And that unfortunate sculptor is now at the lowest level of the undead servitude in Nagash's army, that could, as a punishment for how bad that original sculpture was.
I think that's 100% true. That guy has been a zombie for like 3,000 years.
Absolutely.
Also, you mentioned the Flagellant kit, the Empire Flagellant kit, and let me just say for potential converters out there, that Flagellant kit is cheap and it is gold. It is conversion gold. It's got guys with their heads on fire, it's got books, it's got chains, it's got crazy weapons. It is just, like, literally, even if you just bought it to use it as conversion, it would not be a bad investment at around $20.
I've got several of baggies filled with those, and I've even bought more of them for other reasons. Though the Hair on Fire, I'm using them as part of a second Mortis engine, which it has these like kind of flaming skulls that on the top of them. There's 4 of them. Yep. I use the actual skulls as alternative parts. I love that kit, and I see them every once in a while on eBay or on barter sites. I'll snatch them up anytime I can, of course, if they're cheap enough. Sometimes there are other people that have the same idea, so you got to be careful not to overpay. All right, let's go move to the next one. And I thought this one was also just as equally, if not more, appropriate in terms of just funny and built from a story. So please tell us a little background about this one.
So this is the Muppet Man. This came out of a long-term challenge.
The Muppet Man?
The Muppet Man, yes. The Noblars 3. If you've watched the new Muppet movie that was made recently with like Jason Segel and whatever, they're trying to get into Miss Piggy, and they're like, she won't see them because she doesn't want to see the Muppets. So they go, okay, let's do Muppet Man. And Muppet Man is when all the Muppets get inside a trench coat and stand on top of each other and pretend to be a person. And they walk in with like Fozzie as the head, and like a bunch of them are the legs and arms. They're all moving around, but there's really just a bunch of Muppets inside. And so what happened here is, out of many discussions with Tiram, I had said he has expressed his want of a Noblar hero and his sadness that the book does not contain one. I said, just do it as an ogre, and do it as like a Muppet Man. Pretend like put a bunch of Noblars standing on top of each other, and have him covered by a cloak. And he said, oh, that's silly, that's too silly for my ogres. My ogres are a very serious affair, as though they're all like watching Downton Abbey in their spare time. And and then so he went into this in a random conversation, a random PM or paint-a-sode or something. He went into a conversation about a fire belly and how they have to drink lava and those who survive. And I was like, all right, stop. There is nothing serious about ogres if they're drinking lava. You must take back everything you said. And I finally broke him, and he said, all right, if you do this conversion and you put it up to a vote and everybody votes it in, I'll use it. I said, deal. So that's where this guy comes from. This is 3 little Noblars that I had. I had all these bits. I had 3 little, so that's 3 little Noblars standing on top of each other. And they have a little ogre face and 2 hands with weapons on clubs, or on sticks rather, that they're holding. And they have a big coat around them, so that's like the moment where they're pulling their cloak off to reveal themselves as we were 3 Noblars the whole time.
I love this. There's such comedy and story in this, and I thought what was the most fitting part of just how much character there is in this model is that Josh Materum actually, and for those who may not also be followers of his channel, and I encourage you to go and subscribe if you're not. There's some great storytelling and phenomenal content on his channel as well. But I'm sure there's plenty of people that are followers of both of us that are also of him. But if you're not, go ahead and click subscribe on his channel as well. So he has this ongoing narrative with his fellow gamers, and he actually included this model in with the story in a great way too. It was very fitting with his narrative.
Yeah, I love the story of this guy joining up and ingratiating himself with the tyrant. It's fantastic.
All right, so I'm going to go and move on to this one, and I've got a couple of people who actually have said that they're going to steal this idea. I've seen people do some stuff like this, but these are my Cryptars. And I still have not gotten back to finishing these guys, and I'm just determined to do it. I converted up a whole ton of them, and I'm hoping I still can use them when it comes to 9th. But I took from these the bodies of the Cryptars, and I tried to use more of the Cryptar, actually the Vargeist stuff, because they have all that hair, but I didn't have enough of them. So I used a lot more of the Cryptar bodies, and then I used the heads from the direwolves, and they just fit so perfectly because I wanted something that didn't look like Cryptars, and I wanted something that was more fitting with the theme that I had for my Vampire Council. Even though it's not very Bretonnian, I just didn't want the Cryptars as they already were, something that set them apart. And then I had to use a lot of green stuff to mold all the manes around the throat and around the back. And so I added a few of these things along with some bases for fillers and gravestones, and these came out great. And kind of funny enough, I really wanted to have, and I try to put little pieces for fillers as kind of like a kind of a taunting to my opponents for certain armies in some of the different fillers and the different models that I have. So I have like a victim here from the Empire, and I have a head that I thought was what are the guys who have from the Ogre army who have the cannons that shoot out that instead of actually guns, they're cannons?
The lead belchers.
Lead belchers, thank you. I had a brain cramp there for a minute. I thought this was a lead belcher head and I do this sometimes after I've played a game where I've been victimized by this one unit. So I decided I wanted to have one of these guys holding the disemboweled head, the ripped off head of a lead belcher. And I didn't realize when I bought this bit, this is not a lead belcher. Do you know what this is from?
I don't know that. Is that a giant head?
That's a giant head. I put it on the table at one point, and the guy's like, is that a giant head? I said, no, that's a lead belcher. And the guy told me it's a giant, so I'm actually even happier that it's a giant, that this unit must have actually finished off at some point in its history a giant. But it's going to be sufficiently bloody at some point when I finish it up. But this is, I'm working on it. I'm still trying to make sure I don't screw up the color scheme because, again, my painting skills are getting better, but they're not quite there yet.
It's a journey, not a destination. These are great. They're fantastic conversions. There are no good werewolves in freaking Warhammer, and it pisses me off. And these are awesome looking.
Why is that?
I don't know. It's a mystery to me. We've stolen every other trope from fantasy ever, but we don't get any werewolves. It's maybe a ninth edition. But
Probably.
the other thing, and these are I really love them. I love the integration of like normal size bases with the unit fillers and things like that are an easy example of like, look, when you're converting and you're doing something special like this, you might end up paying a little more sometimes per unit, but you can do tricks like that not only look great, but also help bring that cost back down, because that's saving you 1, 2, 3 models or something you didn't have to convert, and they look great on the thing, and honestly probably fit better anyways because these guys are so big, they don't want to rank up easily, and it makes it a lot easier. And the other thing I say real quick is you mentioned the giant head. Truly the greatest kit ever for conversions is the Warhammer Giant kit. You gotta get the plastic, don't get the metal giant. But that kit has more bits and bobs and hands and stones and guys in cages and cows, and it is a converter's treasure trove.
There's so much you can do with that kit. I still have it on my list of things to acquire because I bought individually so many of those bits that I swear I should have just bought the box outright. I would have probably saved money.
That is the one kit that I would honestly say that would not be a bad investment.
Okay, this one, and I know this one is probably special in your heart because you're a Skaven at the core. Tell us about this one. And this is magnificent, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, so what's better than one screaming bell is 2 screaming bells. And here's okay, I'll give you the dirty secret of this model. Here you go. You ready? This is screaming bells retail for something like what, $63 a piece, US, let's say, right? And so by all accounts, this is like a $120-some model because I shoved 2 of these things on top of each other. Now, here's the secret of this. I would be willing to bet I paid $15 for this total model.
Wow, really?
That's 100% true. Because, as we said, if you really get into bits hunting, watch eBay, watch auctions. People do auctions for bits. They start them at 99 cents. I just over a couple months accumulated 2 screaming bells at winning auctions for $1 or $1.50 each.
Yep.
And there you go.
I've done that actually with the gyrocopters recently. Of course, it was before the big rumors for Ninth happened. Now you probably can even get them for cheaper, but you get just the bits for the pieces of alternate kits and then you can make 2 out of them. This is great for the big kits like the Coven Throne and the Mortis Engine. I can imagine it's the same thing for the Furnace and the Screaming Bell. If they come out of the same box, you just buy the alternate bits. You can get them for just maybe $1 plus the cost of shipping, and if you get multiple pieces, you're probably saving on combined cost of shipping with a lot of these guys. Of course, check before you do that. And you can get them for a song, and then you, of course, average down your overall investment. I can't believe you got this whole thing for $15, though.
That is 100% true. I would be shocked, and I'm overestimating, just to be fair. I'm counting in shipping.
Wow.
Let me say that. Yeah.
Wow.
And so I just had this, and so I looked at it for a while and just sat there with the pieces in front of me and just started playing around with them.
How long did it take you?
How can I stick them together?
How long did it take you to put this thing together? Because it just looks like such a production.
Well, here's what's funny about that. So, this is definitely, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but this is you wouldn't want to try to do this right out of the gate because this thing is it takes some vision. I did not put this together before I painted it. This is all sub-assemblies, okay? So I literally just had to, in my head, figure out how all this was going to work and sort of, lay it down on my work table. And then all that's actually I put together is, in between, you can see where why am I pointing like they can see me pointing? I'm an idiot. Anyway, you can see where the front cross beam coming down out of the green rock on the top one goes into the back cross beam. Yeah, there you go, that line. Okay, that has a big giant pin running through it on each side, right? And that was the only thing that was put together on this whole model. before I painted it. Okay? Everything else was complete sub-assembly. The stone arches, the bell, everything else. The ogre was off there, and then I started fashioning pieces out. Like some of the planks are just like the floors are just made out of extra wood and stuff like that. The extra little posts that are holding it up in the back, those are just this, actually. This the very thing I mentioned earlier, these little punji stick shish kebabi things. And then at the end, after it was all painted, I put it together and figured out and got it in there. I would say all told, like from sitting there on gray plastic pieces to complete it, this was like probably 3 days of work.
Really? You're kidding? I'm amazed. I'm just snails. I'm turtle snow. I'm slow. I'm absolutely the slowest person probably that does these types of jobs. I will take a month just to set up all the pieces and fit them and get them right before I even put glue down. I mean, that's why it's taking me so long to do this stuff. This looks like it would take forever, and I'm just trying to envision painting this, because when I put together some of the complicated stuff that I do, I'm thinking about painting this stuff before I do some of the actual final work. Where it's put together, and I just can't try to envision trying to get the brushes in between some of these pieces and bits. And it just looks like it would be such an undertaking to do that after it's completed. So I'm astonished at how great it came out if it was actually painted after it was all put together.
No, it was painted first. That's what I'm saying. Like all sub-assembly, I painted the whole thing.
Okay.
And then put the whole thing together.
Okay,
so,
great.
Like,
because it's highly recommended that you do that if you have a very complicated piece. But even so, wow, oh God. This has got to be imposing to your opponents when you put this thing on the table.
Yeah, until they see what Screaming Bells actually do and they just shoot it with a cannon and get rid of it. But that's okay. I love this thing all the same and try to get it in every single list I can. It's one of my favorite things, exactly. I have a love for Skaven. If it's a rat bigger than a clan rat, I'm going to convert it. And this was just a lot of fun to do. I wanted to make... The bell is supposed to be this big, impressive thing, and this is pre-Vermin Lord I did this. And I really wanted, like, a centerpiece model, a true giant centerpiece model, and so that's what they came out of here.
I find that when you do these extravagant conversions, they tend to garnish greater attention on the board during play. That's one of the reasons why I also did, it's not one of the reasons, but I found that as a nice residual effect with the werewolves for Crypt Horrors. Crypt Horrors are great, and they're really good when you have lots of them, but they look so much more offensive as werewolves than they actually are on the table, so people go after them and get tar-pitted by them much more with this conversion than I think that they're worth. And I look at a model like this, and I'm thinking, this is the kind of thing it probably already would have gotten a lot of attention from shooting and other things, but an impressive model like this as a centerpiece or as just a major focal point in your army probably can change the game and adjust somebody else's strategy to your advantage in some respects, because they're probably going to pay a little bit extra time in the course of the game focusing on it.
I think that's 100% true. Obviously not in every game. Some people are, like if you're ridden with a really hard-edged tournament player, they're going to react how they're going to react. But I think in a lot of common play, yeah, like my Keeper of Secrets is the big, like, Forge World Keeper of Secrets. Doesn't matter how effective she is. Not that she's not effective, but I had a friend openly tell me, I am going to try to kill her first every time because she is a big, giant model. So hence I'm afraid of her. Like, no idea what her stats were or what she could do. He just knows she's big, hence I should kill her.
I think it's an underused method of gaming, the psychological aspect. It's one of the things why I put those little, like I'll put a piece from some army as like a slain or, destroyed character being held up by one of these models. And I think that it's not like it's something that is going to really throw somebody's game off, but it can in some small way, and it could just be a conversation piece. I can imagine this one absolutely just totally focusing my attention, at least in the initial stages of the game.
Yeah, I always try to use dead Empire guys and High Elves. Those are my two favorite corpses to make on my bases. I run a lot of evil armies, and so my people all seem to be murdering Empire and High Elves, which are the two things I enjoy killing the most. So there you go.
So you had mentioned the Nagash model. I'm going to show you what this is. Not the first, not the second, probably the third time that I actually put all the pieces out before I actually even cut anything, before I even went to go you doing the Nagash model. And you can see on my iPad over here, this was the initial inspiration. I abandoned this completely once I started. I was going to try to emulate that particular model because I wanted something so unique, and it turned out to be something different. But the thing that took me the most time to do was the base. So I'm just going to go quickly cut to the actual finished base. I worked on this for a month, literally a month, before I actually even got to Nagash. And this is still not completed. I just wanted a whole bunch of different undead coming out of the ground because he's this big summoner before I even put him on the friggin' base. And then I think this is the best picture I probably have of him in his current state. I still haven't finished him, which is, again, one of my... I mean, I need to finish more of these models. And then I finally converted him up and put him down, and I'll eventually get back to him and complete him. I think I lost a little bit of steam because I don't think anybody wants to face him. I was hoping... I was hoping that more of these like superpowered, crazy, like just total batshit crazy, characters from End Times would come out, and sure enough, there have been more of them. There's 3 or 4 guys that totally, when you throw them on the table, people just, if they don't have their own to counter them, it could be just lights out, game over. So I figured, when more people have those, I'll bring Nagash back onto the table, but only with invitation only.
Hey, I still expect to see him this summer when I come visit and we get a game on as part of the World Tour. Let me tell you what. I want Nagash. I want to see him on the table.
You will. You will. I absolutely intend to put him out there, and I love that confidence and that just the balls it takes to say, I want that guy, because a lot of people whine and complain about these outrageously powerful characters, like the Eternity King or Karl Franz, as Josh says, Shazam. I think they're hysterical. I think they're great. I think they're probably not going to be around for forever. Once Ninth comes, I think everything's going to get toned down. But while they're here, if we can play with them and have them on the table, let's have fun with them. I think it's great to have. There's a small select group of people that have been that have actually approached me and said, put him out there. I want to see how good he is. I want to see if I can take him down. So I look forward to that game. That's going to be fun when you make it to this area. And I appreciate that that you're gonna do that, and that you're gonna include me on your tour.
I wouldn't miss it for the world, man. I'm very excited about it. I can't wait for the game.
All right, so let's see. I just clicked off sharing. So, I'd love to do more of these because we've got a lot of other models that I've seen that you've put up when, for the PMP, great paint jobs, but what I find is something that we're kind of kindred spirit is that, we like to do a lot of converting.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that we both have these large model count armies too, which is just a lot of pain and a lot of effort. But there's other aspects of this that we just don't have the time. I think we've been going on almost an hour and a half now. But there are things that I think that are other stages of converting that can be simplistic or more advanced. Things like magnetizing and other things. I'd love to go and do future ones with you and just really kind of delve into more specific elements of converting and what it takes and how you got to that. So I'd love to do this again with you. And if there are others that are really heavy into this part of the hobby, that you want to recommend, please let me know. And anybody who's watching this, if you're interested, you have any questions, again, Vince has a presence on YouTube. He's got a presence with the Warhammer YouTubers. He's great. He's always putting out some really good content and commentary. I encourage you to subscribe to him. And Vince, excuse me, while I die here on air. If you have any,
we'll be able to do more of the shows.
Well, everybody will know whatever happened to that guy, MC1 Gamer. Any closing remarks or any kind of advice before we finish this particular show?
One, I would absolutely love to do more of these, and I agree. I would love to. There's so many good and fun things to drill down on. How do you convert for a different base? How do you convert your bases? What you said about the Nagash base is a great example. That's another great place to start. I hadn't even thought about until you mentioned it. Converting on your bases, taking all those bits and doing that work. You're not going to worry about breaking the model then. Let's start with the base. Be all about that base. Be Megan Trainor. And so something like that. So yeah, I'd love to do more of that. I think that sounds like a great time. And let me just say, yeah, by all means, if you got any questions, hit me up on YouTube anytime, or on the Warhammer YouTubers. Send me a message. I'm always happy to help in any way I can.
Well, again, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate the time you put into this. I run this as a kind of my own show, a Convert This, which, by the way, the title came from Analyze This. I figured, I live in Jersey. I've got a little bit of the accent from the Northeast, even though I've got a little bit of Southern in me. But I just wanted something with a little attitude, like Convert This. And I think that kind of confidence and that kind of creative spirit really it helps the hobby. Wherever the rules go, wherever ninth goes, however the game falls, or whatever game you're playing, you can make something very much your own and very much unique. And when you put it on the table and you open up your book and you play the game, however you play it, that model is something that will speak to people, and it's an expression of you and your creativity. And there's a lot or a little you could put into it, but it's the creative juices that you use to make these models stand out really pays off when you see other people who are gaming with you, that when they see it and they comment on it, it's just a whole other aspect of the game that I just love. I love seeing other people with the impulse like you have as well. And I think it's great to match up with them, and I think it's wonderful that we can try and share some of that, and then learn from other people as well, because I've learned a ton from YouTube. So again, thank you for joining me, and hey everybody, have a great day.